Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to a new episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. with Wendy Russell and Mike Moroz. You guys want to start off by giving me getting everybody a bit of an introduction to yourselves?
Sure. Yeah. We started investing probably over 25 years ago now in Canada. And then we started investing in the US in 2010. And we've done all sorts of stuff, multifamily and single family homes and STRs and all the things. So
I think we originally started in the US in 2010. Yeah. And if you remember back in 2010, the US housing market was experiencing some challenges, and the Canadian dollar was at par, if not a little better. So we were looking at potential different markets as to where to invest. So that was fun. I think we even looked at Vegas to start with. But
where did you actually start?
Yeah, we started in Indianapolis, of all places, and that's usually the first question that everybody asks us is like, why the heck Indianapolis? And his best friend lives there with our godkids. So we have two godchildren that live there. Yeah. And it was sort of this no-brainer. We were visiting all the time. Yeah. And we started getting really familiar with the city and the neighborhoods, and it just made a ton of sense because we were down there all the time throughout the year. So it was just, it was an easy one. And then the other city that we're now invested in down there is Savannah, Georgia. Oh. And that again is the connection with that is that Mike's head office is there. So Mike still has a full-time job. Yep. As the director of Canadian operations for a US company. And he was down there all the time for Christmas parties and meetings and things, and I would tag along, and I'm like, oh my God, I love this place. It's amazing. So I was like, we need to get something in Savannah. So we did. Ours is really about connection to the cities that we've been invested in.
That's awesome. Like that is great to have like some sort of connection to it. And honestly, before the Savannah Bananas, I had no idea where Savannah was. Like, honestly,
I know I should have worn my Savannah Bananas shirt. I have one, and a cap.
So, you had a personal connection to these places. Do you have to have a personal connection? Like for me personally, I bought a bunch of properties in Indianapolis before, but I've never been to Indianapolis. Do you think you have to like actually, have a connection, or how do you, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think this is very polarizing question because we know so many investors and we've had coaches that have said, you don't need to go to the place where you're investing. You don't need to know it. Just if you have a good team, you're good to go. I don't know if I'm just too much of a control freak or I don't know what, but I like to be able to go there and know it. And especially if we've got short-term rentals, I want to be able to, tell our guests and our tenants, great places to go and hang out and enjoy. So for me, I think that's our vibe.
Also because we do joint venturing, I think it gives our partners more of a sense of ease, knowing that we know the markets really, really well and we're very familiar with it. And a lot of cities in the US, you can go from one street to the next or one house to the next, and it's a different story. I mean, that's just for us. Everybody's different and everybody has their own comfort level, but I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, but that's kind of our...
No, I'm not against that at all. And you mentioned like roads, cities with like different roads. I was in Cincinnati and I was like, this road is like so done up, and you walk over a block, you're like, should I be here? You walk
yeah.
We've done a few viewings where we didn't even get out of the car. It's like
driving.
This is nuts.
Yeah. So tip of the cap, Glenn, because you're one of those guys that will invest in a city you've never been to. So
But I
maybe
think
we can
it
be
comes
you
down
and
to like,
Paula.
I do like the idea of going, right? And I do like the idea of, personally meeting people. But there is ways to still make it safe. And I think a lot of it is contracts. And I have a whole checklist of stuff that you want to have done to make sure that you're not going to get taken advantage of.
Right.
And you're going to make it protect yourself. So even if they don't do what they say they're going to do, you have some sort of repercussion.
Yep. Yep.
We don't really do a lot of renovations. And if we do, we did some pretty big renovations in Savannah, but Wendy stayed there and project managed the entire renovation. So that was also just to, make sure everything's getting done. But you're right about the team. I think between the realtor and your property manager, I think are the key.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do flips, so our realtors get us off-market deals, which are fantastic, and the property managers, I think, will make or break your entire operation, and they have so much value add if you have the right property managers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we when we bought the first single family home in Indianapolis in 2010, and we made the grave mistake of taking on the property manager that was already managing that house in Indy, and it almost made us want to quit investing in the States because it was a terrible experience. So we ended up creating our own property management vetting process, and it has worked amazingly. And it's a pretty robust system that we now follow to the T, so none of that happens again. Because we have a horror story. we had one tenant that was in a house when we bought it, and we were like very happy that they were there, and it was fabulous. And then we didn't get rent for a month or two, and Mike called the property manager and said, "Hey, what's up with the tenant?" And they're like, "Oh, they just late on their rent or whatever." And we're like, "Okay, sure." And then we're like, "Can you check?" In the meantime, we had gotten a letter in the mail that said, "Hi, we noticed your house is empty. Would you like to sell it?" And we're like, "What?"
With a picture of our house, which was pretty creepy.
Yeah, it was pretty disturbing. So we got a letter, old-fashioned letter in the mail, with an offer to buy our house that was empty, and our property manager had told us like a day or two before that it was that they just hadn't been late on their rent. So they weren't doing their job. Let's just put it that way. So that was horrifying.
No, like they should know that there's nobody in the property. Holy moly. I have more free content. So if you're interested, I created a PDF guide and a video to go along with the PDF guide to complement it. And what the guide is all about is the 5 most common mistakes that Canadians make when investing in the United States. So if you're interested in this free guide, go to CanadianInvestingInTheUSA.com/mistakes. And let's go back to the podcast. And it's free.
Yeah.
But I guess
we were not only not in the same city, not in the same country, and we're finding out before the property manager finds out that the property is vacant is a good sign to change property management companies.
Yeah. I've had some like spots in like my investing too, where there's spots where you kind of lose trust in the property managers. I remember there was one time, and I kept getting like these, repair bills. And I was like, it's like, I feel like I'm like, I don't think these are legit. I'm starting to think like, what are they? This can't be real. And I'm like, okay, I'm flying to Kansas City next week anyway, so I'm just not going to tell them. And I'm going to surprise the property manager and everybody. And I'm going to show up to the property and, do it. And you know what? In my case, it turned out they actually were real things. Like, oh, there's a pinhole leak in a copper pipe in the basement. And like, sure enough, there was a bucket, but the property managers weren't providing photos. And then that's one of the scary parts about it is you are putting some trust in complete strangers, to be completely honest.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, okay, maybe I'll turn this into a better question. So you guys, you said you started off with Indy, you went to Savannah, I'm assuming you pick some other markets as well. Let's talk markets. Like, what are you looking for when you're switching markets? Why switch markets? Well, why'd you pick those markets? Like, let's go into that a little bit more in depth.
I think it's a great question because it's what we ask our colleagues as well, is what kind of financial goals are you looking to achieve? Are you looking for cash flow? And we are about the cash flow. So that's one of the major considerations that we have when looking in different markets. We live in Ontario. It's tough to cash flow here. And so typically what we're seeing, mostly Midwest, is fantastic for the cash flow. If you're looking for more appreciation or perhaps different strategies, then you can go more coastal, I think. In Savannah, we're doing short-term accommodations there and long-term in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And the reason that we love Savannah in particular, I think one of the things is that if we get this question all the time is, how do I know what market to invest in if I know nothing about the States or I've never been there before? Should I just hop on the Orlando bandwagon and do it like everybody else is? But for us, we also look at, does that city, does that town, does that village provide multiple rental strategies? Are there where you can pivot? So for example, the short-term rental market has definitely shifted in the last 2 years since the pandemic. It was super hot 2020, 2021, even into 2022. Then it took a bit of a dip when the economy changed and people weren't doing that as much and weren't traveling as much because they were either back to work, they couldn't work remotely anymore. So there were so many factors on why that changed the market. And Savannah is a very interesting town because it not only you can accommodate long-term tenants, but depending on where you purchase, you're allowed to do short-term rentals, although those restrictions are very, very heavily governed. So that's challenging in itself. But there's also the film industry. So you're now you're able to house crews that are coming in from Atlanta and filming there. For example, they were just filming The Walking Dead a couple blocks from our house last summer. So it's
scary.
It's a it was very cool actually. The set decorators came and they were putting like moss and all sorts of like old twigs and trees on all the fire hydrants. It was very cool. They dressed our whole street up like it was, a zombie town. It was very cool.
Anyway, sorry.
There's the film industry. There's traveling nurses is huge there. There's lots of industry. So the new Hyundai plant is being built there, and they're bringing all of the executives from Korea over. Then they need housing. They want large single family homes to rent while they're setting up their processes and their new employees and that kind of thing. So they're going to need housing for all of those thousands and thousands of employees that are now working at that plant. There's also student rentals are massive there. So SCAD is their big college there, the Savannah College of Art and Design, and they have 14,000 students every year. And SCAD owns a huge part of the real estate in downtown Savannah, and a lot of it is housing, but they still need more student housing. So that's something that's, is a huge need there. Boy, like it's one of those towns that kind of ticks a bunch of boxes. So you can pivot with your properties at any given time and make sure that you have zero vacancy because you've got options.
I may have heard that wrong. At the start, did you say that there were certain areas that you could do Airbnb or short-term rentals and certain areas you couldn't? Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I just wanted to let you know that I've created a new coaching program. I believe the new coaching program has way more value than any of the programs that have even existed in the past. What we've done is pre-recorded all the lessons so that you can work through it at your own pace, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to meet up on a regular basis to answer the questions, do deal analysis, and actually spend our time together working on things instead of spending our time learning things. I think this will make a seamless transition to buying in the United States and will help you solve a lot of your problems. If this is of interest to you, go to glensutherland.com/coaching. I hope to help you guys invest in the United States, and I hope we provide as much value as possible. Back to the podcast.
That's correct. Yeah, it's very restrictive now. It exploded a couple of years ago before they regulated it, and then they put the regulations in place. So it's only allowed, there's 3 historical districts in Savannah, and it's only allowed in those 3 historical districts. Any sort of neighborhood that outside of that downtown area is a complete ban. And then on top of that, they don't do single family home licenses anymore. So you have to have at least one. It's based on zoning there. Okay. So you either have to purchase a home that has already been granted a permit or a license, and then you can, renew it as the new owner within 6 months of purchase, and then that will carry on and you'll be grandfathered forever. That's one option. The other option is finding a piece of property that is zoned commercially, and that's the only other time that they're going to allow you to get a brand new STVR license there. So it's tricky, and there's not a lot left, but we got very lucky and we found a little duplex on a corner, and it was in a neighborhood that is gentrifying, and so we were able to get 2 STVR licenses, which then upped the value of our home immediately by, I don't know,
about 150,000.
Yeah, at least. So it was pretty amazing. So that we had instant equity in the property when we purchased it.
And I was going to say, like you just mentioned, like that the historical districts were the only place you could really do this. So, and you kind of answered it, because I was going to ask you, like, does that change the price points of the properties in those areas? And, so you just said $150,000 difference. Does, how much does that affect the ability even to pull off like the numbers in the Airbnb, compared to even if you wanted to go do it in Indianapolis, for instance, like where you may not have that same regulation? Does that, those more higher price points hurt how much do they hurt? I guess they're going to hurt. Right.
Well, interestingly, there are the 3 districts. So there's the northern, the southern district, and then we are in the third, the lower district, which is, a little bit further away from River Street, which is where all the action is. So we're in the most, I guess that's the most southern spot. And that's the neighborhood that is gentrifying. So their price point is still lower than where all of the really giant old Victorians are that are absolutely massive. These houses are, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 square feet. And we're obviously originally single family homes that have now been either converted into multifamily or short-term vacation rentals at some point. And so, but there's still these little outlier spots that if you can get them, like we purchased ours for $400,000 2 years ago.
Awesome.
It's probably worth, I think we're close to $750 now, something like that is where we're at with the value in 2 years. So
That's
good. It worked.
Yeah, I'd say so. The other thing you said is like, you can Airbnb commercial properties. And that honestly just, it makes me like, just my mind starts to move, right? Like I know like, in the past, like, cause my parents owned like a mixed use building. And I'm like, maybe stuff like that would work, where you had like a storefront on the bottom and something at the top, and then you could make some of that stuff work. But normally, people who are interested in residential real estate or Airbnbs or long-term rentals or midterm rentals, you want to stay away from commercial because it usually hurts your leverage and sometimes your interest rates, which is it's just a backwards sort of way to think. But sometimes that's where the opportunity is doing the opposite, which you normally do. I don't know.
Yeah, in this particular case, even though it in a commercial zone, we were still able to get a residential loan on it because it's a purpose-built dwelling. It was.
In all honesty, though, even as being a foreign national, like we're typically doing DSCR loans anyway, so they're kind of like doing a commercial loan anyway. So we're, if you're doing this in Canada, it might be different than doing it in the US because it's kind of the lending we're already kind of playing with.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, for other people are looking to invest in the US, looking for their markets. Any other tips they should have before they like put their roots down and start investing in a certain market?
I would say I've read this a few places, and I can vouch for it. In our experience, anyways, it takes be prepared to spend about 6 months to really research the market, to find your team, to build your team, to properly vet your team, just have that in mind. Don't feel like you need to do everything overnight. That is just a recipe for bad decisions, in our opinion. So take your time, but be very, very thorough. I guess the biggest, or another big piece, is when you're speaking to a realtor, understand that the realtor wants to sell the property.
Yes.
So they can tell you whatever you want to hear in terms of potential rents, but listen to what they say, but also check in with your property manager to see the real value, run your numbers based on that. And if it works, now you're cooking.
Oh, there were some good ones there, but yeah, no, totally agree. It's the most common problem I have is when people hire really fast. They buy the property and then they try to figure out the teams in the last little bit. And that's when you make mistakes. It's the common thing. Like when I wanted to do a horror story episode for Halloween, it was the common thing is whenever they were like last second, something happened, the property manager quit, and they had to get someone because they had someone before the next rent was up, and they rushed it, is when the biggest mistakes happen. Doing any sort of real estate, Canada or US, anywhere, it's going to be the same sort of thing. So those are some great tips. Guys, if people wanted to get a hold of you, they wanted to, find your website, your email, or whatever you feel like giving, how do people find you?
Sure. Yeah, they can reach out. Our email is lywproperties@gmail.com. That is, LYW stands for love your work, because you got to love your work when you're doing this. So lywproperties@gmail.com. They can reach out. Happy to chat. Reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I learned a lot about Savannah, Georgia, and this was awesome. So appreciate it.
Amazing.
Anytime.
Our pleasure.
That was a nice video. Bye.